Hey everybody, thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be diving into M.S. Harkness's Time Under Tension. I've gotten a few of M.S. Harkness's self-published things over the last year or so, and they're really some of my favorite autobiographical comics I've ever read. It's a genre that I'm always hesitant about. It's not my favorite as a genre, even though there are a number of books in the genre, like this one, that I wind up really liking. But I think M.S. Harkness is by far one of my favorite. I definitely need to go back and get the entire back catalog because she is telling her life story in her books. You don't need the backstory for any of this to make sense or work. That's one of the great things about how her work is done. But when you're invested in a story, you kind of want to know the whole thing. And M.S. Harkness has definitely got me invested in her story. I ordered this from Fantagraphics with the Fanabucks sale, and it came with a cool little signed plate and a sketch in here. That's always awesome. So I must have been in the first however many to order it. Always glad when my Fantagraphics books show up with these extra little goodies in them. I think, and in some of the reviews that I saw just casually around online, people were talking about that this is a creator who's been a great creator for a long time, leveling up into a really next level, next tier artist and creator, cartoonist, and I 100% agree. There's something about the art in this where it looks like M.S. Harkness. I don't know if this was a book that was done knowing that it was going to be published at Fantagraphics, and so she went in harder, or she just chose to go harder on this one, and that's what led to the deal with Fantagraphics. But it really feels like an artist saying, okay, I'm going to make my fucking statement. And right out the gate, you get it just in the amount of detail that's in the leaves and stuff on these buildings. You can see that this is an artist that's putting everything into this book. And if you've seen her previous work, it just feels like the next step. And also you get the sense that this is an artist who's going to keep working. So the book opens with 2 weeks prior, and there's the big kind of opening sequence here, as well as this little intro sequence, and then jumping back to 2 weeks prior. One of the things that is, really uncomfortable about Harkness's work, but also makes it really fascinating, is she's very open about the fact that she is a sex worker and that's how she's getting through college. This is a part of her real life, and it's a very, I can't imagine many people being comfortable just putting that out there for everyone to know like this, and she's always very open about it. I think one of the things that's made Harkness's work really appealing to me is it's not the typical autobiography of a comics creator where they're talking about making their book or having trouble making their book. I mean, that's definitely a component of this book more than in her other works that I've read. But this is somebody who gets out and has a life, lives a life, has adventures, is doing something that not a lot of people are doing, has an experience not a lot of people have to share. And I think that makes all the difference. You can't tell compelling stories when all you do is sit in your room and draw. That's all you have to talk about. It's not compelling. And M.S. Harkness definitely lives a very compelling life. And the fact that she's willing to put it out there, so brutally honest as this is really, really hard to read, but makes the work really interesting to me. Also, some really intense stuff here. Again, putting personal life out on blast. Looking at a email coming in. Dear Miss Harkness, I am writing you to make you aware that an individual who was sexually offensive to you, your father, Tracy Shaddix, has been in treatment program for sexual offending behavior. As part of this treatment, he has written a letter of apology to you. So that's part of the story of the book, is her having to make this decision about how she wants to deal with this. Does she want to deal with her father, who obviously sexually abused her? So really intense emotional stuff. I think everyone should go buy this and read this book and buy as much of M.S. Harkness's work as you can. So I don't want to get too much into the details, but just kind of giving you a flavor of the book. A guy that she's dating in this is working, he's getting a UFC tryout. He's an MMA fighter, professional MMA fighter, and he says he's going to Vegas to try out And I think that they're suggesting that he's going to Vegas to try out either for the Ultimate Fighter. This is another thing that, like, I, as a big fan of MMA, really grabbed me in this book personally. And I was honestly trying to figure out how who this dude is. I know that's inappropriate and unfair, but it's like, oh, okay, like if he's doing a tryout, he's either going on Dana White's Contender Series or he's going onto the Ultimate Fighter. They talk about who his first fight is, a guy named Vicente, and there is a fighter named Vicente Luque. So it's just hard not to be like, like, yeah, but the hair and stuff, I can't place the fighter. So I don't know if she's like hiding his identity by drawing him different or something. But it was really hard as a pretty obsessive about that as, well, not quite as obsessive about that as I'm about comics, but pretty intense fan of MMA. It was hard for my brain not to go down those routes. So that was a really interesting subplot, getting to follow this guy's like the story of his fights and stuff through her eyes and her relationship with him. Some really, really cool compositions here as she's just going over like her life story, like this big map, and you kind of flow through these compositions here. This is another one of those things where you're like, oh fuck yeah, like this is an artist who's really like, I've got a Fantagraphics book, I'm going all in on that. And yeah, the beautiful, beautiful compositions. Again, some really intense sexual imagery and some very uncomfortable stuff. Like here, her as a young girl with like what I'm assuming is her dad. Yeah, her dad's coming out and saying, from the ages of 9 to 12, my dad molested me constantly and physically abused both myself and my younger sibling. So within these beautiful compositions, just some really awful and intense imagery. Then you get the indicia page like way late into the book, and like the title page, I mean, this is like page like mid 60 pages into the book. So really this is all just like preface to the book. I don't know if I've ever seen a book really do that in the same way. I thought that was really, really interesting to have that in mid book. And then you basically catch back up to now, where she's working on the current book and living her life. You see some of the images from earlier in the book or from earlier projects. I really like this page where she's got all her pages on the wall and she's looking at the drawing of herself, like basically gagging on this guy's dick. I'm assuming is like a sex work scene. And it just really like rethinking what she's doing, and it's all just told silently, but her sitting there looking at it, both assessing it and probably as an artist, like looking at the drawing, but also I'm sure the emotional, like, do I really want to put this out? Like, what the hell am I doing putting this stuff out? And to be able to do that all silently, to be able to do that with so few lines, like such simple, clear cartooning, is really, really stunning, really astonishing. There's something else that jumped out to me, and I don't know if this was intentional, but I thought it was a pretty interesting little like trick where this same building drawing, like the same drawing of the building, it almost just looks like a copy and paste, like a stat of the same drawing almost. Here it's as if the building is being seen from the top. We're looking at the top down, like we see her coming out, and here it's positioned in such a way that it looks like we're looking up the road at it, kind of like a tilted San Francisco road or something like that. I don't know why that jumped out at me so clearly, but it's a really fun like perspective trick just based on the framing, and I just thought that was visually really interesting, so I wanted to point it out. I don't even know if that was planned. It seems pretty planned to me. Right here, Harkness actually expresses why I like her work so much. She says, I've never bought into the introverted artist stereotype. People are too unique and fascinating to disengage from. Even when you feel adept to explain the quirks and mannerisms of others, it's not quite right. And that's exactly how I feel about her book. She's not the introverted artist stereotype. Like, you get the sense from reading her books that this is somebody who's really lived life, really had a ton of adventures, and is somehow still finding the time to make comics. There's not many comics that I read them and I'd be like, yeah, like a night on that town with that person would probably be pretty fun. You'd probably have some wild adventures, like that would be enjoyable. Usually it's like, oh, what a sad, pathetic, like neurotic sack. I wouldn't want to hang out with it. And you always get the sense, as an introverted person myself, mostly, I don't think this is a pace I could keep up with, but you definitely get the sense, and this is rare for me from autobio comics, that like, yeah, like this is someone, if you hung out with them, it would be a story to tell. And that's exactly, if you're gonna do autobio, like you got to tell the story. Throughout the whole book, I was thinking a lot of just the way that MS Harkness explains her views about the world, the way she expresses herself, things she says. I'm like, I wonder if she has autism. In this scene, she goes to a therapist, and the therapist gives her a note saying, I think you have autism. She fights against this and doesn't seem to accept it and doesn't think it's accurate. So, you got to trust the author there. But myself, probably being autistic, Tori having recently been diagnosed as autistic, her child, Jack, being autistic, I kind of have a good, and dealing with many autistic students as well, I kind of have a sense of like the thought patterns that we tend to go through. And it was hard not to see that in the book. So when I got to this part in the book, I was like, yep, I've been thinking that for like the last 60 pages. But she doesn't seem to accept it, which is fine. I mean, I think there's other ways to be outside of societal norms than to have autism. This is another where I just had to show. There's a number of pages, but that are impressive like this. I just had to show this as another example of it's not all just like clean, simple cartooning. There are these pages where Harkness really is, leveling up and going in and becoming that next level of creator. And it's really, really fun to see that happening. And that's where I really want to go back and see the earlier work to track that progression, because that's one of my favorite things, is to watch an artist progress, see what those things, where it clicks for them, when they tip over, and what it is that clicks for them. And images like this is like, yeah, something clicked. And then another one of these, you can see just these really, really cool. Again, there's a bunch of these in the book, these big montage spreads that are more evidence of a creator really pushing their boundaries, exploring new visual territory, and not tripping on it, but just like leveling up each step of the way, always finding themselves capable of leveling up to the next level. I think some people hit plateaus, but seeing this gives me confidence that MS Harkness will be someone to continue to watch for the rest of her career. A very vigorous person with a lot of life, obviously, coming through the stories, and you can see that as a relentless pursuit to get better in her art as well. A lot of it's about her being a bodybuilder, so that comes with this like pursuit of struggle and pushing. And I think that push to always be better is something that really resonates with me as well, and makes this a very easy to consume autobiography. So I don't want to say more about it. This is fairly new. I was kind of hoping that Tori would read it and do a review with me. I thought she would like a lot of it, especially with like the autism stuff in it, because like this came like a week or two after she had got that diagnosis. But she just hasn't been able to read. So I'm really sad that I didn't put this out like a couple days after it came out, because this is a book I definitely wanted to pump. But now that I realize it's going to be a while and we're not going to be able to do a video together, I really wanted to get this out there as soon as possible, and encourage everyone who has not got Time Under Tension by MS Harkness from Fantagraphics to go get it now. And then please join me in, as soon as I can, going back and getting all of her back catalog of her self-published stuff, because I think this is someone who's not just like, this is a great book, but this is someone whose career you're going to be able to look at as an entire singular project. And that always really excites me about creators as well. So someone who I look forward to buying and reading comics from for a long time to come. House on Fire by Matt Battaglia is a just gorgeous book where Matt's kind of making an emotional response to the years of COVID, and wrapping that into a sci-fi dystopian future that really the sci-fi dystopian's backgrounded, and you're focused on the emotional journey of two characters in a really beautiful way. And then that's enhanced by Matt's like really awesome, loose, kind of Paul Popish dry brush work. And then Sean and Matt have worked to get this second kind of orange spot color in there that's going to look really, really beautiful, and has allowed Matt to use his dry brush technique to add tone to the thing too. So with Sean's production technique, this is going to be a gorgeous book with a lot of heart.